Welcome back to the Truth Tank. I am your host, The Tank. This is episode 6 of the Truth Tank. It's been a while since I put out a podcast. Apologies for that. I've been busy as fuck lately. I've been working really hard to try and get the podcast running more efficiently and firing on all cylinders. I've been working on some future episodes, some bigger and better topics I'll be covering. Like I said in the last one, I'm done with the Star Wars topic. We're moving on to some history. There's going to be some really good informative and entertaining shows coming down the pipe. I know I said in the last episode that this is going to be a historical one. The next episode is in production. It's a really big show that is taking a lot longer than I'd like it to. I'm not going to put out an episode that I don't think is up to standard. It's very research heavy and I want it to be factual and entertaining, but also do it in a very Truth Tank way. Now, apologies again for taking longer than expected. I'm a one-man show. I'm trying to juggle a lot of things at once, but there's a really great historical episode coming in the next couple of weeks. At this stage, it's going to be a two-parter. I'm not going to give it away, but I'll give you a little hint. It's got to do with an ancient culture and time. So in the meantime, I thought I would put out a bit more lighthearted, not so research heavy, more of a slightly more funny episode for your listening enjoyment. This episode is going to be different. It's going to be fun. We'll be looking at the end of the world scenarios. What would be the worst? What would be the best? I mean, realistically, I think they're all probably worst case scenarios, but we're going to be looking at apocalyptic scenarios and going over the challenges of apocalyptic scenarios to see what the challenges and what even the upside of things might be. So without further ado, let's get into tonight's show. It's time for Pick Your Apocalypse. Okay, what end of the world scenario would be the worst? There's various different scenarios for the end of the world. Lots of different prophecies, lots of different predictions. None have come true yet. I'm a very big environmentalist, whether you are a climate change, global warming believer or a denier. I don't think anyone can deny that our planet is changing pretty rapidly. I'm not going to get too much into the global warming topic tonight, but it's important to mention, I think. Look at what's happening in Brazil with the horrific rainforest fires, and the government just seems not to want to do a fucking thing about it. And they're kind of forgetting that, you know, these are the lungs of the world. You're damaging not only the environment, but you're damaging tourism, and yeah, this is a trend we're seeing all over the planet. So people, if you're listening, please look after the planet. If you're one of these people that thinks that your small scale efforts won't affect the bigger picture, then just go jump out a fucking window right now. Because if you have that defeatist attitude, then yeah, you might as well just go blow your brains out, because the planet's not going to save itself, and it's an effort that's going to take the entire world to get on the same page and do their best efforts to try and change the planet for the better. It would be good for us, it's good for Mother Nature. I don't know why there's such opposition to it. I don't think anyone can deny that, yeah, the world's changing, is going through a pretty rapid and severe transitional period. You know, this has been caused by human-made pollution. You know, ice caps don't melt themselves. There are a lot of various factors that have come into play. It's, you know, I don't think it can all be man-made, but I think human-made pollution has a lot to answer for in climate change. Yeah, the world goes through cycles and climate changes every few thousand years or so, but what we're seeing now is definitely an accelerated pattern of climate change that no one else can be blamed apart from human pollution and the impact we're having on the world. Before you go buy your next, you know, V8 Land Cruiser, stop and think, do I really need it? Can a Toyota Corolla suffice? Could a hybrid? Car manufacturers are finally getting on board. They're, you know, planning for the future. They're producing more electrics. So think of it that way. Do I need a big car? Do I need 1400 cylinders? No. Could I get by on this? Do I have to use so much water? Do I have to eat so much red meat? That's a huge part of global warming, is meat production. You know, if you go, oh, you're a fucking vegetarian or vegan. No, I eat meat, but I like to be ethical about it. You can eat meat too, just you don't need it 8 times a day. Once or twice will do. You know, we don't. Our way of life is hurting the planet, and if we don't do something about it, we ain't going to have a planet to live on. And considering most of the planet can't afford to move to Mars or anywhere else, we're all going to be fucked. So it's what we do now as a global community that's going to have lasting impact for future generations. I'll be covering global warming and climate change in later episodes, but I felt like it was important to address that now, considering that we could be living in the pre-apocalyptic stages of an apocalyptic scenario if we don't change our ways. So once again, small-scale efforts have big consequences. You know, get out there, plant trees, use less water, use less power, reduce your carbon footprint. Alright, let's move on with the show. So this is Pick Your Apocalypse. So we're going to start off with looking at probably everyone's favourite apocalyptic scenario, zombies. Alright, so zombie apocalypse. This has become hugely popular in recent years with the TV shows like The Walking Dead and the resurgence of zombie-related movies. There's, I think, a couple of years ago there was just fucking zombie movies galore. All of them were B-grade shit, but whatever. It's Pride and Prejudice with zombies, zombie beavers, zombie this, zombie that. And this is nothing new. Zombies have been around in pop culture for many years. Giorgio A. Romano probably made one of the first mainstream zombie films with Day of the Dead, which was remade in the 2000s. But zombies themselves go back a lot longer than that. Zombies go back right back to, I think it's ancient Greece and ancient Mesopotamia. The Vikings mentioned zombies called droggers that resided in crypts and out in the woods in Scandinavia, and the only way they could be killed would be either decapitation or destroying the brain, which is basically the stock standard mythology for killing zombies that has survived till this day, is destroying the brain. So it's interesting that this is not just a pop culture phenomenon. The zombies have been talked about in history, which also kind of makes you wonder, where do these myths and legends originate from? I mean, they obviously didn't make them up. I mean, let's take the Vikings as for an example. I think Vikings had a lot more to do, a lot bigger things to worry about than making up stories about The Walking Dead. They're too busy, raiding and pillaging and hoarding gold and wheeling and dealing to worry about fictional stories. So, is there any truth to zombies? I'm sure it's probably not too far-fetched to say that there's probably some lab-created virus out there that could turn people into zombies. I mean, look at the drug epidemic around the world. That basically, you have willing participants putting chemicals in their bodies that are turning their brains into mush, and they wander around like zombies, acting erratically, throwing themselves through fucking windows. And so it's not that far-fetched to say that, they're probably... We look around society today, that there are some prime examples of zombie-like behaviour. Just look at all the cunts walking around with their phones, like zombies walking straight across the road without looking. That fucking pisses me off so much. Some dumb cunt walks across the road looking at his phone. No one stops anymore. Stops and looks left or right. They just keep walking. Fuck, the amount of times I've had to slam the brakes on because some fuckwit has walked out in front of me with a mobile phone, head glued to it, eyes down, real fucking smart. So there's phone zombies, drug zombies. So is there some type of parasite or some type of virus in nature that we don't know about that could turn humans into mindless zombies that start eating flesh? Yeah, it's likely that could happen. I mean, scientifically it's probably not outside the realms of possibility. That's if, what if the government cooked up some super virus and unleashed it on poor and impoverished communities. I mean, this has been done before in the 80s with the crack epidemic in south central Los Angeles. So let's go back to The Walking Dead. We're going to use Walking Dead as whether you like the show or not, we're going to use Walking Dead as an example. So, what would life be like living in a zombie apocalypse? I think most people have this romantic notion that the zombie apocalypse would be cool, for a lack of another word. I think they've seen shows like Walking Dead and have this notion in their head, oh, I'm going to be a survivor, some backwoods survivor like Daryl Dixon. I'll walk around with my crossbow, my bug out bag, and I'll take out a couple of zombies that make camp and, keep roaming around nomadically looking for places, looking for supplies. I think the zombie apocalypse would probably be fun for about 2-3 days at the most. Then it'd just be like, fuck, I'm hungry, there's no food. Is it safe to drink this water? Because I don't know about you, but if I was in a climate like Georgia or anywhere hot or humid for that matter, I couldn't go more than 45 minutes without water. I sweat like a beast. I don't handle the heat that well, so unless at a decent temperature, it wouldn't be that fun. You'd be dehydrating, you'd be sweating. If you'd run out of water, you probably only have a day or two to live anyway, and that's if you don't get eaten alive by a pack of zombies or killed by another person. Then you got the food issue, so you can't just go down to the shops and buy it. You'd have to assume that most places would be looted. Most grocery stores would be completely picked clean, unless you want to go there hunting and catching your own food or eating roadkill, which, let's face it, there's probably 90% of the planet would be wiped out probably pretty quickly because no one knows how to survive anymore. Yeah, there's a proportion of people that can live off the land and hunt and have the stomach to gut an animal and eat it. There's a lot of people that don't. A lot of people just are so disconnected and separated from the realities of food production that most of the human race would be fucked within the first couple of weeks. Which adds to the other problem is the more people that die, the more zombies there are. So it's kind of a lose-lose scenario in that sense. So food production, yeah, unless you'd have, the only way you'd be able to survive would be kind of like The Walking Dead, set up colonies and communities and grow your own food. Start clearing out certain sections and making them safe, sending out people on supply runs. You could also think that transport would probably be pretty limited. There'd be lots of broken down cars. At the same time, we rely so heavily on petroleum for transport that our cars would run out pretty fucking quickly. There'd be a lot of cars lying around, but probably not a lot of functioning cars. Petrol and gas stations would dry up pretty quick. Depending on what kind of country you're in, petrol could last you a month or two, a few months, or it might last you a few weeks or a couple of days. So this is, once again, as a modern society, we're so reliant on having access to food, water, fuel that we've never really had to search for it. In a scenario that these things would be some of the first parts of infrastructure to disappear, it would be highly unlikely most people wouldn't survive. So people would have to look for other means of transport, such as they'd have to start walking again. And given how out of shape that most people are, that's probably going to be a challenge for a huge portion of the population. Bicycles would be the way to go. Having a decent mountain bike with some with some bags attached to it would probably be the most efficient and renewable form of transportation. If you're lucky enough to have an electric car, chances are that power stations would probably stay up longer than the fuel stations would last. So you could probably plug in and charge your car up a bit longer if you're inventive enough. If you could figure out how to run your car on solar power, that'd be the way to go. But that would be in a perfect world where we have solar powered cars, but we don't. We have greedy corporations that control the planet's resources and fuck the environment for everyone else. So this would leave us with horses. There wouldn't be a huge amount of horses around. If you're in rural areas, you're probably fine. You probably know how to ride a horse, but for most of us city slickers, we rely so heavily on fossil fuels that we'd probably be fucked. That brings me to the other point. everyone would be leaving the city at the same time, which would, like you see in Walking Dead and all those apocalyptic movies, you'd have millions of cars piled up on freeways, all looking to get out, all going in the same direction. So my plan would be to wait a couple of days, hit the grocery stores, hit the chemists, the drugstores, hoard as many antibiotics and painkillers and pharmacy medicine and as much food as I could get my hands on, and wait for all the morons to block up the freeways and all the exit points. Wait it out for a couple of days, a week or two, then kind of take over the area. Have a pharmacy, have a medication for food trade scheme going, and set up my own civilization. Yeah, I think, in seriousness, I think waiting it out for a couple of days is probably the way to go. I think too many people would be going to the same places at the same time, which would just cause even more chaos. If the virus breaks out, someone gets bitten, then you're going to have a whole bunch of people in a confined space that are all panicking, all running over each other and get it infected at the same time, largely like you see the hordes in The Walking Dead. So yeah, trying to survive in a zombie apocalypse would probably be pretty shitty. It'd be terrifying. I think any of these scenarios that I'd be bringing up would be terrifying. You'd have to worry about dehydrating, starving to death. Shit, if I cut myself, am I going to get an infection and die within a couple of weeks or a couple of days? Do you injure yourself? The only way to really survive would be to stick together and to create community groups and band together with other survivors, because I think one person by themselves would, if you know what you're doing, you could probably last a couple of months. You could maybe get a year or two, but for most people they would probably last a couple of days. So banding together for survival, the safety in numbers, would be the only way to go. But it's not only zombies you have to worry about, it's other groups of people. Ruthless groups like you see in The Walking Dead. Yeah, what if they just want to kill you and take your stuff? You got to watch out for other humans. Can you trust anyone? Someone flags you down. Oh, I need help. Just you have half a dozen people hiding in the bushes ready to kill you and take all your shit. You got to think like that. Can I trust these people? And just look at Rick's character arc and how he goes from cop trying to protect everyone to just being a fucking ruthless prick. And he ends up basically turning out as bad as some of the groups he goes to war with. You have, what if he has some psychopath that just wants to start his own tyrannical reign and creates his own dictatorship like Negan or any of those characters? What if you had groups of people that you get taken in by this kind of dictator who subjugates his own will on other people and takes their stuff, basically, and kind of enslaves them to his way of doing things. And then you have all these people who are ruthless enough to kill and steal from their fellow human for their own gains. But this is survival, and it's survival of the fittest after all. The strong are going to prey on the weak need the strong for protection, and vice versa. So you have this cycle, kind of like you see in The Walking Dead, that the strong are going to prey on the weak, or not so much the strong, but predators are going to prey on the weak. They're going to see people as, oh, this is an opportunity, I can take your stuff. So you've got zombies, you've got diseases, from zombies, which is one thing they never really go into much in the show, that you could probably get some horrific fucking diseases and sickness from having a whole bunch of dead people walking around. It'd probably be pretty fucking disgusting. If you got touched a zombie, you'd have to wash yourself. You have to keep your hygiene up. You wouldn't want to have any open wounds around, walking corpses, because the risk of infection would be ridiculously high. Not to mention that they get covered in blood and guts in the show, and none of them ever really seem to get sick. Which, yeah, given that the heat, the amount you sweat, you're probably going to come across, get cuts and abrasions pretty quickly. Getting infected cuts would probably be one of the major health concerns. That's the other thing. You have no access to hospitals or medication, so you're going to have to tough it out. Those people who get sick all the time, good luck surviving more than a couple of months. People are really going to be at the mercy of other people in a zombie apocalypse. It's not going to just be flesh-eating zombies. It's going to be any type of apocalyptic scenario is going to bring out the worst in humans. And then, if you're strong enough to survive that and fight your way through it, great. If not, you're going to be at the mercy of other people's compassion. And you've also got diseases to worry about, food, water, transport. There's a whole bunch of shit to worry about with a zombie apocalypse, besides from the zombies. Let's go into the pros and cons now. So pros, it cuts down the population quite significantly. Probably gets rid of a lot of dumb fucks in the process. Yeah, if you want to go the romanticized version of a zombie apocalypse, yeah, it'd be fun for a couple of days, maybe a few weeks. You get to live out your survivalist fantasies, get your bug out bag and your crossbow, your knife, and disappear into the woods and live off the land. Most people wouldn't be able to do that. Cons: other people, zombies, obviously. Getting eaten alive by a zombie wouldn't be fun. Disease, fatigue, food, water, transport, shelter, safety. And I could go on and on and on. Right, so that's the zombie apocalypse round. Now it's time for round 2. Machines enslave and eradicate humans. So the robocalypse, if that makes sense. So machines, basically a technology-based apocalypse. I.e., we've seen this in films like Terminator, iRobot, Blade Runner. But moving away from the movies, you look at companies like DARPA that have those fucking terrifying DARPA bots, that cheetah thing that can carry over 100 kilos. I think it was developed to get supplies to soldiers on the front lines, and it can move over any terrain really. It's got thermal sensors to pick out body heat. You can even pick up heartbeats through walls. So that's fucking frightening. Think of a Terminator scenario. You have machines making machines. Machines make a DARPA bot, which is basically pretty primitive to what you see in movies and TV, that can already sense heartbeats to find humans. This DARPA bot is designed to aid humans on the battlefield and in rescue operations. But if this was made, on the other hand, was engineered by machines to eradicate humans, that would be pretty frightening. If this thing can pick up your heart rate, can pick up your heartbeat through a fucking wall. It doesn't leave people many places to hide. You can just sense your heartbeat. You can pick up your body heat. It'd be pretty frightening. It takes our survival odds down a couple of notches, to say the least. So then you could get a thing what if we had a Skynet program that was making man-sized killbots that terminated humans? They could sense humans. They, hard to take out. They just walk around shooting and eradicating humans, like you see. Look how terrifying the opening scenes of Terminator 2 are, and those flashback scenes in Terminator. James Cameron was really fucking onto something with that. He tapped into this primal fear of this tech phobia. This is one of my likely scenarios that I think that could actually come true. Would humans create a artificial intelligence that's so advanced that it renders humans obsolete and decides to kill us all? It decides that, like I've been harping on about, it decides we're a threat to the planet and a threat to its own existence, and goes into self-preservation survival mode and decides that we need to die. It's a bit pretty freaky. It probably happened very subtly. Look how reliant we are as a species on technology. We're only going forward with technology. Most people can't go through the day without a mobile phone, a TV, a light, a radio, anything like that. So you take those things away from humans, and there's going to be a huge gap of time that we're going to be like defenseless children. We wouldn't know what's going on. Look at all our communications technology is based on pretty much the internet, social media. Look at Wi-Fi now. Most homes have, well, in Australia anyway, the NBN, all the phone and internet lines go through a router in your home now, which relies on power. Yeah, before, if the power went out, you just lose the internet, but you could still use the phone. Now you can't use the phone because it all goes through this box. So if you have a couple of blackouts in a year and you need to use a phone, and if you're an elderly person or someone that doesn't have access to a mobile phone, yeah, you're pretty much fucked. You can't call for help. Most of our phones now have Wi-Fi calling. I think, yeah, you probably still use your mobile phone in these instances, but for how long? That's only as good as the network's available, which would be the first thing to go, the communication network. Like in any war, you get rid of the communication network. If machines got rid of fucking Wi-Fi and mobile and cellular phone towers and signals and satellites, then yeah, we're fucked. We might as well be back in the Stone Age. So then let's look at like a scenario like iRobot, where we have a company that has these robots that are designed to make humans' lives easier. They do the cooking, the cleaning. I think Amazon at the moment's working on something similar. These domestic robots. And we've seen this in TV and movies and shit, as I just said. But what happened if you had a bad software update with one of these home bots and it decides to go postal and kill the occupants? It wouldn't be much fun, because let's face it, you couldn't fucking fight a robot. It's stronger, probably smarter than you. Like an iRobot, it starts holding people hostages and starts rounding people up. I think any technologically based apocalypse is probably going to end the same way. Look at Blade Runner. You have replicants that are indistinguishable from humans, that are stronger than humans. They're being programmed to do, remedial tasks and chores. And what happens when they don't want to be retired by a Blade Runner? They go into self-preservation mode until their batteries run out, pretty much. This would be the same thing with any of these tech apocalypses. An apocalypse brought about by machines would be especially frightening, given that our society revolves around our technological innovations, and you're dealing with an artificial intelligence that can develop, design and conceive technology faster than we can, and can probably make it, because let's face it, most of our manufacturing now is automated. So it's entirely possible that a scenario like Terminator could come true. I mean, I think DARPA has even made a 6 foot tall human-like machine that moves around like a man with some type of skin or disguise on it. It's pretty hard to tell that a man from a machine. It's about the same size and weight. It moves similar. Only problem is it's a lot tougher than the biological equivalent. Look at some of the robotics they have in Japan that are fucking freaky. They look so lifelike and can answer questions. And what was that robot Sophie that it was asked a question on a reality show and it said, haha, my goal is to enslave all humans. It was joking. Well, we're led to believe that was a joke, but what if it wasn't? Just think about that for a minute. There's always a degree of fear with any technological innovation. There's always people that don't understand it. The creators of these technologies are so caught up with the ability to, we can do this now. We can make this technology. They never quite stop and think if they should. And that's the biggest problem. They come up with all these inventions and this artificial intelligences and stuff, and they never stop to think, should we be doing this? Should we make this? Is this an ethical product? I mean, look at the stuff in the news lately with the Google and Amazon home box things like Alexa, and I don't know what any of the other ones are called. I don't like those things. They've been spying and collecting data on their users. So this is another example of tech companies that are gathering our information, using it for God knows what. It's probably used for advertising purposes and trying to tailor the shopping experience at consumers, but at the same time, what if it's not? They say it is, but I'm not one of these people that's just going to believe what I see on the fucking news or by what mission statement these companies decide to put out. So what if it is funneling information back to a server, a router, or whatever that is collecting your information and passing it along? What if it is finding your weaknesses, Because after all, most people are buying everything through these things, and in the future they probably will buy. A majority of shopping will be done through these automated services, so they're going to know what you eat, what you like to drink, what size clothes you are, what size shoe, what medications you take, what you're allergic to. They're going to know everything. They can have dossiers and files on everyone, so stands to reason they're going to know how to exploit your weaknesses. What if they slowly poison you? What if it's not like Terminator and they don't just nuke the planet and take over that and then send a bunch of Terminators out to mop up any stragglers before the resistance rises up and stops them? What if they slowly wipe us out through poisoning us or modifying food or medications and doing it that way, making us so bored and fixated on streaming services like Netflix and Stan and the millions of others, and keeps us preoccupied with video games? We don't see the takeover coming. Think about it. Then you got companies like DARPA that, DARPA made the internet. They are great at making these things. Yeah, I'm not saying that they're nefarious. They're trying to make machines that are going to wipe us out, but they have the applications and the technology already in place to make these Terminator-esque machines. What's to say that some other program like a Skynet program doesn't steal these designs and make them better and use the technology that's already in place in 2019 to use that against humans in the future? So, pros and cons. Pros, it would prove that the technophobes were right all along and were justified to fear technology. I think people should have a healthy fear for technology. I don't think they should just adopt it and use it. They should, think about it. They should be cautious of any new technology. I think this is, if you are smart, this is how you'd go about it. Another pro would be it would bring people together. It sounds pretty hippie-ish, but it'd bring humans back together and stop relying on technology to communicate. You'd have, you can't hack face-to-face communications. It would get people using pen and paper again. I mean, fuck, how many young people can't even write these days without the advent of a fucking iPad or a computer? Most people only know how to type. They can't write a letter anymore. It'd bring this nostalgic way of life back in a way. People would start communicating again. They'd start writing. They would start getting so incensed of everything they see on social media and voice an opinion that no one asks for. They would stop being so reliant on technology. They wouldn't rely on information technology or communications technology to, communicate. There'll be no text messaging, no Facebook Messenger, none of that shit. It'd be face-to-face, looking at another human being, interacting like we're supposed to. Organic and biological communication. If we look at any of these ancient cultures, the Egyptians, Romans, Sumerians, Babylonians, Mayans, etc., they were highly advanced civilizations that were more technologically advanced than we are today. We don't look at them as being technologically advanced because they didn't have iPhones or Samsung Galaxies or the internet or PlayStation 4. We look at them as primitive because they didn't have these things, but in a sense they were a hell of a lot more advanced than us because look at what they built. I mean, most buildings now are lucky if they get 10 to 20 years out of them before we pull them down and build over the top of them with some other new design. And now all of our buildings are, glass and steel, concrete. The ancients built out of stone because it lasted. They built for a reason. They built their structures and their monuments, their cities out of stone. They built out of stone because, well, for one, it never went out of fashion, but it was stone lasted the test of time. It wasn't going to go anywhere. It wasn't going to erode. Well, it would erode slowly over thousands of years rather than degrading over a few decades. I mean, most modern day concrete now is lucky if it gets 10 years out of it before it's structurally fucked. It's not just construction technology that they were a hell of a lot more advanced than us, which I won't get into too much on this show. I'll be touching upon this more in the future. It was also their knowledge of nature, astronomy, the spiritual world. If you want to be one of these people that doesn't acknowledge the spiritual world, yeah, that's fine. But I'm a huge believer that the spiritual world is very misunderstood, but the ancients understood it. They seemingly blended mythology and reality as the one. They don't look at it separately or look at it as a fringe science like we do. Just look at how the Mayans understood time compared to modern day humans. They also had these ancient cultures had better relationships with the land and the environment. They knew how to work crops and to plan years based on astronomical cycles. That's moving a bit off the topic. So in a sense, it would put humans back in touch with our ancestors' way of life. So maybe this would be a good thing, maybe it'd be a bad thing if we did have a tech apocalypse. It would stop our reliance on technology, and most importantly information technology, and get us back in tune with nature, get us communicating and talking again, and get us back in touch with the spiritual world. So on the one hand, it probably wouldn't be that bad of a thing. It would get us in touch with local community and it forces us back into understanding agriculture better. I mean, yeah, I have nothing against technology. I mean, I love streaming movies and sports. Fucking streaming live sports is pretty much the best thing since sliced bread. Getting a subscription to a sport that you don't usually get access to it's fantastic. I am a huge fan of the NFL. As you can probably tell by my accent, I am Australian. We get the NFL on network TV. We get 3 games a week. I'm a big fan of the NFL, so I want more. I've had the NFL Game Pass for the last couple of years, and it's fucking awesome. I get to stream the games live at the same time as they're shown in the United States. I get to follow my favourite team. I get to keep up with the scores. You get the access to NFL films, Red Zone, all that shit. This probably sounds like an ad for the NFL Network, but it is really cool that I can watch a sport on the other side of the world at the same time as it's being played on the other side of the world. Most of the games are on during the afternoon or early morning here, so yeah, it's fucking great. I've done this with the NFL and the MLB and the NBA. Yeah, sure, I could go get a paid TV subscription, but I'm not a huge fan of paid TV. I don't like having access to a little bit or what some giant corporation thinks I should have access to. If I want to follow a sport, I want access to all of it. That's one of the positives of modern technology. So let's look at the cons for a sec. Medicine technology. This is one of the better parts of a modern society, is having access to technology and the eradication of diseases and viruses that have in the past have killed millions of people. I mean, fuck, if you had a cold in the dark ages, you might as well just go top yourself right then and there. Yeah, that the flu killed millions of people thousands of years ago, and it still killed. I mean, it doesn't kill as many people as it used to, but the flu's coming back with a vengeance. It's starting to kill a lot of people. So having access to medical technology is a great thing. It's also made a lot of weaker and sicker people. It's given them a new lease on life that these people probably wouldn't be around if they didn't have access to medications and such. So that's a positive part of technology. Sending SMSs, using the internet, buy an item from anywhere on the planet is great. Online gaming is great. There's a lot of benefits to technology, but there's also a darker side to technology that a lot of people don't realize. They accept technology on face value and never really look much into it. A couple of other cons for a technology-based apocalypse are, billions of people would die. Nuclear weapons would probably be involved. I think humans would probably use them against machines. I mean, machines would use them against humans, just as as we see in Terminator. I've used a lot of movie examples on this show, but helps illustrate the point. It'd also be fucking terrifying. I think it'd probably be a struggle for people to stay alive. You couldn't grow crops as easy as if with a zombie apocalypse. I think most people would probably rally together, but there'd probably be groups of people that would be preying on the weak and the helpless. Another pro would be humans would also get access to a higher technology. If the machines had better technology, humans could also access that technology through reverse engineering or whatever. So there's pros and cons for both sides of the coin. But yeah, it'd be pretty frightening. People would have to live underground. They'd have to really be smart because their technology could probably sense body heat, heart rate, scent, what have you. So this will take us back to more of our animalistic traits, which may or may not be a good thing. Let's move on to round 3. This one's probably a bit more realistic. It's a little more out of the box. It's probably not as popular as the other scenarios, but I think this one's a lot more realistic, and that is humans gone wild. So this scenario is kind of like Mad Max, a Book of Eli. Some type of apocalypse happens, whether it's a nuclear war that wipes out most of the population and leaves those who can survive in a world gone mad scenario like Mad Max, and leaves a whole bunch of irradiated freaks in its wake. It's like Book of Eli, the world collapses. Books have become a high commodity, especially religious texts, and that's become a very valuable commodity. So this scenario revolves around tyrannical dictators leading communities against one another, more or less. So let's take the original Mad Maxes. You have these bunch of freak shows living out in the desert that have come up with these tribes who prey on survivors and strugglers in other communities, like in Mad Max 2. You have the humongous followers attacking that oil refinery out in the desert. Mad Max is an interesting scenario because the most valuable commodity is fuel and bullets, and the ability to control those resources basically gives you a hell of a lot of power over that area. So the ability to move around, the reliance on gasoline and oil, basically all our archaic fossil fuels that are causing a lot of problems for the environment now. These are the key resources in these scenarios, which is, this kind of leads me to believe that this is another scenario that could actually happen. We could go so far and ignore the warning signs of global warming, and we could become basically like Mad Max. Let's look at Mad Max Fury Road, where we have this irradiated dictator, the Immortum Joe, claims himself basically king over this whole area. He controls water, another resource vital for life. He has the green place. He's growing he's cultivating crops. He's also trying to breed non-irradiated children. So you got this environmental factor mixed in with this nuclear apocalypse, oil war scenario playing out, and you have a whole bunch of people stuck in the middle. Like Max always finds himself in situations where he's got to survive pretty much. He's a nomad. He gets as much fuel as he can. He goes from one spot to another, wandering the wastelands. So if you take the other scenario, Book of Eli, where we have another same thing. We have this community. We have a dictator that gets all these people to follow him and tries to manipulate and terrorize an area. He tries to control the resources. Tries to control the knowledge. Like Gary Oldman's character. I haven't seen that movie in a while, but I think he wants the Bible so he can control knowledge and he can control power, make himself out like he's some type of divine character because he's the only one that can read. Well, this is basically the Middle Ages. Catholic Church were the educated ones. They were the ones that could read. They were the ones that dictated the rule of God and put the fear of God into the average Joe and the working class citizens that were illiterate and didn't have the access to education or to knowledge. So they manipulated people's fears by pretending that they were blessed with enlightenment, which is basically what his character tries to do in Book of Eli. Humans gone wild. So this would bring out the utter worst of humanity. It'd be one tribe against another. People would be killing each other left, right, and center. It'd be terrifying. It probably wouldn't be as bad as the first two. After all, humans can predict what humans are going to do. I don't think, at this point, I don't think human nature really surprises anyone. We're a pretty violent, barbaric species that has little to low tolerance to anything that we find a threat, or that anything that we find different, for that matter. Just look at history and the way humans have treated each other, especially the way they've treated different groups of people or those they've deemed different. The pros would be it brings people closer together, community again. The resurgence of community, it'd probably bring out the best in some people. It would make people work together to survive. On the other hand, you'd have the worst of humanity would come out without any laws in place to govern human behavior. It'd be a free-for-all. Some people would do the right thing, but probably a majority would, once again, prey on the weak, manipulate their power and subjugate it over other people, like we see in Mad Max, Book of Eli, etc. Alright, so this leads us to round 4. This one is a very real possibility, and it's a fucking scary one. That is a nuclear holocaust. Nuclear holocaust would be frightening. Not only would it probably kill a majority of the planet, it also obviously irradiate and destroy the environment. It pollute the water. It basically make the survivors' chances of surviving even harder, because if your environment you need to survive is polluted or irradiated, how are you supposed to grow crops? How are you supposed to raise livestock? How are you supposed to get clean water? It'd make these things even more difficult. I really wish humans would spend less on nuclear weapons and more on environmental initiatives, environmental protection, clean energy. We need to move away from that shit, but I've harped on about that enough. One of my favourite games is the Fallout series. If you haven't played it, just imagine a technological renaissance with 50s technology, like cars, TV, etc. So there's a nuclear holocaust, people go into vaults for hundreds of years and emerge into an irradiated and completely fucked world. One frightening thing about the game is that the radiation has irradiated the creatures on the planet. If anyone who's played this, death claws are fucking frightening. The first time you go up against them, they're hard as fuck to kill. You'd have super mutants, which are giant yellowy green, I think they're irradiated people or something, that turn into these giant 10-foot tall brutish super mutant things that just basically kill everything in sight. They have the mutant hounds, which are also scary. You have irradiated wildlife, as like the red roaches in the game. There's these giant irradiated cockroaches, insects. You have ghouls, glow-in-the-dark ghouls, which are basically irradiated people that have de-evolved to be a irradiated zombie that feeds on radiation. In my opinion, a nuclear holocaust would be the worst scenario to survive in. Every day you'd be playing roulette. You'd be, do I drink from that puddle and risk, having your insides burn out? Do you eat that and get irradiated over hundreds of years? Humans would probably evolve into being able to absorb more radiation. But if this happened now, you would not know what was safe and what wasn't, because you can't taste or see or smell radiation. You wouldn't be able to leave the house unless you've packed your Geiger counter and your radiation suit in your backpack. Like in the game, there's parts that are just a nuclear wasteland, even when they're so irradiated that even if you have a protective suit, you're basically still slowly cooking. You only have a certain amount of time, if you would go into a nuclear reactor. It also make transport very hard, shelter hard. It'd be shit. Everything would be polluted, everything would be poisonous, everything could potentially kill you. If you were to hunt a non-irradiated animal for food and you ate that, there's no chance that didn't eat something irradiated and that somehow poisoned it, which was going to poison you. It wouldn't be a lot of fun. Like in the game, there's unexploded bombs lying around. There's groups of people that have taken over the cities. Society has collapsed. People have just pretty much scavenged whatever they can. On the pros, yeah, once again, it would force people into communities. Like in the game, there's different tribes. Some of them are very like Mad Max-ish in their approach. There's like the group called the Raiders that just go around, preying on the weak, killing and taking over anything they can. There's groups that want to help, who've become pseudo-religious groups that base their religion off of technology and the technology they have found from before the war. They take that as some type of divine omen. There's other groups that would exploit the technology and use it to subjugate their fellow human. People who want to do the right thing, people who don't and are willing to exploit other people. You'd also have a lot of mutant irradiated freaks running around. Pros, yeah, once again, community. That's really all that I can think of with the nuclear holocaust, because everything else about it would be shit. So cons would be groups of other people, you don't know if they're friend or foe. Everything can poison you, the water, the food, the air. You couldn't go anywhere without having protective gear. There'd be few places left on Earth that would be habitable or safe to inhabit by humans. Your odds are 50-50 whether you do anything, whether you eat or drink anything you find. Chances are it could kill you or slowly kill you. The cons list really outweighs the pros for this one. Are there mutated flora and fauna around like you see in the game? You'd have to probably live underground for a long time, which would speed up human evolution into some type of subterranean species. It probably wouldn't be a hell of a lot of fun. Yeah, you'd be able to scavenge a lot of stuff, but at the same time, is anything safe to touch? You'd need a Geiger counter, and if you did survive, you wouldn't survive for that long. You'd probably get a couple of years before you eventually died of radiation poisoning. So the nuclear holocaust scenario would probably be one of the few that would probably be unsurvivable as a species, because everything about radiation can kill or alter carbon life form cell structure. It's pretty much a lose-lose scenario. It doesn't gel well with carbon-based life forms. I mean, nuclear power, nuclear energy, nuclear weapons are not really pretty new technology. They're still a new weapon when you look back throughout history. They're still pretty new and pretty misunderstood form of technology, and I don't really think humans have kind of fully grasped nuclear power or radiation and what it can do. Once again, this goes back to the people who created it were so caught up whether they could do it, they never really stopped to think if they should. Yeah, so this round is pretty much unsurvivable by most. I hate to say it, but yeah, I don't like humanity's chances of surviving with a nuclear holocaust. So this takes us to the fifth and final round. So this one, I think, is one of the most frightening scenarios. Well, it is to me anyway. This would be the ape apocalypse, aka Planet of the Apes. Yeah, once again, I have to rely on a movie scenario for this one, but so just like we see in Rise of the Planet of the Apes, what if there was a pharmaceutical company testing a drug for Alzheimer's that they tested it on apes, as humans have tested most pharmaceuticals on that have reached human trials. Pharmaceutical and cosmetic companies do trials on chimpanzees and apes in preparation for human trials. They, our closest living ancestor, they tested on them to see if it works on us. I'm not for this. I'm very pro-animal. And when it comes to apes, there's a very fine line with, if we wouldn't do it to ourselves, we shouldn't probably do it to them. Given that they are our closest living ancestor, I don't think we exactly came from apes, but I think they're definitely in the wheelhouse of humanity. But I'll touch on that in another episode. So what if apes were to gain human level intelligence? What if they became self-aware and said, "Hey, what are these hairless apes doing? They keep killing us. They keep killing us, locking us up in zoos. Fuck this. We're not going to take this anymore," and turn the tables against us. What would be to stop them? Let's have a look at some facts about apes. Chimpanzees are like 10 times stronger than humans. Gorillas are even stronger again. I mean, even orangutans, will fuck a human up. They have that, primeval strength. They have speed, agility, Apes are smart as fuck, but especially chimps. Chimps and gorillas have pretty strong and pretty sophisticated social behavior and social structures. They have very strong family bonds and family groups. There's even that, I think, National Geographic or Discovery documentary that shows that group of chimps hunting monkeys for food. I mean, when they catch them, they don't even kill them. They just eat them while they're still alive and screaming. They could kill them, but they choose not to. Apes have a very sadistic, cruel streak, which is very reminiscent of humans. Humans would be the only other animal species, for that matter, to do something like that. Would be, cruelty for cruelty's sake. Chimps are one of the few animal species, if you want to call them that, that's been documented using vengeance. They hold grudges against other chimps, other apes. I mean, even people. They also has been shown to recognize people after decades have gone by. They recognize individuals. So there's a level of intelligence to chimps that is fascinating, but also a little frightening. There's primatologists out there who are starting to suggest that the high apes who are starting to move into a Stone Age-like culture and society, much the same way our ancestors would have. There's apes that are using more tools than they used to fish, to hunt. They've been observed using fire because they've seen humans do it. There was a zoo in, I can't remember which country, that they've taught orangutans to use iPads. They've used apps to draw and create artwork with their fingers. They know how to use iPads. I mean, there's some people that can't even use a fucking iPad. But orangutans can, because they've seen humans using it, like Coco the gorilla. She started to use the sign language movements, I don't know what the technical term is called, to smoke, because she saw her handlers going outside and smoking. So apes learn very quickly through observation. So if they see us killing each other and raping the environment and using tools, using technology, chances are that they're going to pick that behavior up pretty quick. And given how smart they already are, it stands to reason that their brains are probably going to go into a forced evolutionary state. I completely believe it when these primatologists have suggested that apes are, going into the Stone Age at the moment. I mean, I think it's completely feasible that modern day apes have watched modern day humans. They're starting to adopt and copy the same traits and behaviors that we are. And it stands to reason that our ancestors probably observed other groups of primates and early hominids, started to adopt some of their social structures and even some of their technology. So it stands to reason that modern day apes are probably doing exactly the same thing. They've seen us using fire, using mobile phones, and like, oh, what's that? I can use that with that when we're not so different. I think I heard somewhere that bonobo apes can use fire. If you want to go into some of the mythology of native peoples, they're talking about Bigfoots, Sasquatches, Yowies, any type of the ancient human primate ancestors. They've all described stories of these creatures using fire. Yes, I am a Bigfoot believer. If you're not, you can fuck off. But you also have the right not to believe. These stories tell us that a lot of these creatures use fire, so it stands to reason they know how to make it. And who's to say that humans were the only ape to use fire? Who's to say that we even learned how to do it? That we didn't see some other group do it, or we didn't get taught it by some other higher species or technology, extraterrestrials, what have you. So apes have strict social structures and hierarchies. They're very well organized socially. They're strong, they're fast, they're smart, and they're cruel. Stands to reason that they probably wouldn't like sharing the planet with us, given that they've probably observed us mistreating it and being such cunts to one another that they probably thought, let's get rid of these hairless apes, they're bad for business. So the pros, once again, this is a recurring theme with every one of these apocalyptic scenarios, is community. It would bring humans together, it would make people communicate verbally and face to face again, and we would get away from being so reliant on technology and pretty much weakening ourselves by this reliance on technology and modern society, and get us back to doing things how they used to be. That's just me being a bit of a technophobe. Another pro would be it might teach humans to be better humans. Might teach us to treat each other better. It might even show us something about ourselves that we haven't yet realised, or we realised that we were doing wrong. Who knows? It's hard to say. They could also just enslave us like Planet of the Apes. They could eat us. Who knows what they could do. Cons, once again, the other recurring theme is millions, if not billions, of people would probably die. It would probably send us back to the Stone Age pretty quickly. And the other recurring theme, it'd be fucking terrifying. Any one of these scenarios I've mentioned would be fucking terrifying. Just thinking about the end of the world, the apocalypse, is terrifying in general. Alright, so that brings us to the end of round 5. But I've got a surprise. This is the bonus round. And the bonus round is climate change, global warming. What happens if we keep going the route we're currently going? Whether you believe it or not, weather events are getting more extreme. The media isn't covering climate issues as much as it used to. The media have covered the fires in Brazil, but not a lot else. It seems to be getting very much swept under the rug. But it comes and goes. Some months you see a bit of it, then you don't hear anything. Really until something happens and people are forced to pay attention to it. Or they're forced to act. So whether you're a climate believer, a skeptic or a denier, we got to do something. So let's just say we keep going the way we're going and we get to 20, 30 years down the track. What if average temperatures are up, the ice caps are melted, the oceans have risen and half the planet's underwater? I just thought of a apocalyptic scenario I didn't mention, Waterworld. What if the future is like Waterworld and none of the above? Once again, it's scary as fuck. Billions would die. Humans would go back to be very tribal and probably very aggressive to one another and very warlike. So let's say that I'm right about global warming, and I pray that I'm not. We keep going the way we're going. Burn fossil fuels, using staggering amounts of energy, wasting water, burning millions if not billions of tons of carbon dioxide and monoxide and released into the atmosphere every year, cutting down trees, clearing land for livestock so some fat fuck can go get a Big Mac at fucking 8 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, well, fuck you. The fate of the planet and the future of humanity is more important than you stuffing your fat fucking face. Fuck off, have a heart attack somewhere else. You know, with the rise of social media, people are obsessed with body image. You got all these fuckheads packed into gyms trying to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I've got to fucking have 400 million grams of protein a day, otherwise I can't get my gains. Bruh, fuck yourself. Pull your head out your ass. One tin of chickpeas has more protein in it than a 500 gram steak. It's also easier to produce, easier to cultivate, easier to process. It's far cleaner and better for your body. It has about 4 times the amount of protein, and it's only 75 cents a tin compared to a couple of dollars per kilo or per pound. It's also far more versatile and easier to cook. It's cheaper. It's good for the environment. It also uses less, or I think, water to produce. Doesn't produce any greenhouse emissions, and takes up less space. It's a win-win. Chickpeas are awesome. So any fuckhead out there who goes, oh, I don't get enough protein, go have a fucking tin of chickpeas and shut your fucking mouth. Cows take up too much land to raise. They eat too much. Modern day farmers are feeding them shit that they're not used to eating, which is therefore making their four stomachs produce more methane gas that's being released into the atmosphere. And really, fucking steak's overrated. So yeah, a good cut of steak is good, but average steak is really not that great. Don't care what you fucking say. You can argue with me. That's fine. Just saying you don't need to eat red meat every day. Look how it didn't work out too well for John Wayne. He died with a fucking crater in his ass the size of a watermelon. It stays in your gut. It rots. Let's be clean. Let's be green. I'm not saying you can't enjoy a steak or a fucking hamburger. You know, fuck knows I like to. Just do it in moderation. We've got to stop fucking thinking selfish. Stop thinking individually and start thinking globally. So let's say the environment is irreparably damaged by human activity and human greed. Let's say the air becomes so bad, the sea levels rise. It's fucking frightening. Once again, billions of people die. People are not addressing the Population, this is one of the single probably greatest causes of global warming, and people just are not talking about it. Because corporations don't want you talking about it because it's bad for business. Fewer people means less money. However, you got to have jobs to employ these people so they don't just become reliant on the system. So it's really a neutral issue. If you have heaps of more people, there's no jobs, that means no money. Not everyone can afford a brand new iPhone every year, so these corporations and these companies have got to take that into consideration. So I hope I'm right. I hope the future turns out better. I hope we do the right thing, because the very real apocalyptic scenario we're facing is global warming and climate change. The future is very uncertain at the moment. It's not too late to turn it around. We have probably 12 years before we do irreversible damage to the planet. We have to start taking this into consideration. Small scale efforts have big scale consequences. If you think that what you're doing doesn't have an impact, you're fucking wrong. What you do right now makes a difference later on. Things are starting to slowly change. Do we really want to face a future where we don't have one? You got to ask yourself, are your children's children going to have a future? Because if we keep going the way we are, we're not going to. Do we want a poisonous, dying world? No, we don't. This world is a gift. We need to look after it. It's a fascinating, beautiful place. We need to get out in nature. Everyone should go for a fucking nature hike. Appreciate the beauty of the natural world. We need more spaces for natural areas, for wilderness areas. We need less housing developments and high-rises. We need less artificial, more natural. We need more waterways, more agricultural areas. We need to be encouraging wildlife. We need more trees in the cities. We need more trees around the world in general. But I think I've made my point. I'm going to stop harping on about global warming. I was going to mention this before. Talking about apocalypse, I've mentioned apocalypse a lot. Apocalypse doesn't mean what a lot of people think it means. It doesn't necessarily mean the end of the world. Apocalypse is actually a Greek term for revelation. The term also has variants, such as the Western translation is the end of something, an end of a cycle, an end of an era, whatever. So most of our society's interpretation of apocalypse or the apocalypse comes from literature, mostly biblical texts and some historical texts, which you got to take into account. When were these texts written? What apocalypse exactly were they referring to? Because all those agnostics out there will go, oh well, fucking the apocalypse didn't come real. It hasn't happened yet. Yeah, it might not have happened yet. Doesn't mean it won't. Depends what were they referring to. What are they meaning by apocalypse? Are they meaning an apocalypse to their culture or their society, such as I think the apocalypse in the book of Revelations or Genesis or something like that? The Jews are referring to the apocalypse as the apocalypse brought about by the Roman Emperor, meaning that the Romans were basically destroying their world, not that the literal end of the world was going to take place. Yes, they could have been referring to that. I could be completely wrong, but these cultures also didn't really take the wider world into perspective. They also didn't have a knowledge of the wider world at the time. Their own geographical region was what they considered the world, and the Romans were this foreign alien invader that had expanded into their territory and wanted to change it. So that literal translation, that apocalypse, literally means revelation. As I just said, our knowledge of apocalypse, or our interpretation of it, comes from apocalyptic literature, which comes from the various genres of religious writings that deal with revelation. We have interpreted it mainly as a cataclysmic event. So apocalyptic literature is a prophetical literature, was developed by the post-exile Jewish culture that was popular in early Christian writings and teachings. And once again, this comes back to the Jewish culture's apocalypse by the Romans, really not the overall end of humanity. The literal translation of the word according to the dictionary is apocalypse, is a Greek word meaning revelation, an unveiling or unfolding of things not previously known and which could not be known apart from the unveiling. As a genre, apocalyptic literature details the author's visions of the end times as revealed by an angel or other heavenly messenger. Apocalyptic literature of Judaism and Christianity embraces a considerable period from the centuries following the Babylonian exile down to the close of the Middle Ages. If you take apocalyptic literature literally, I don't think it can really translate into the modern era. Yeah, you can take some of the prophecies as gospel, but like I just said, that this is from a Babylonian exile. It comes down to the close of the Middle Ages, and well, we're well past the Babylonian exile and the Middle Ages, and these things haven't happened. I'm not saying that they're not going to. I'm just saying we should be looking at apocalypse not so much as a negative end of the world, the sky is falling scenario, but we should be looking at the apocalypse as a revelation. So as I just said, with our current apocalyptic scenario that we're facing with global warming, maybe we should be looking at this pre-apocalyptic stage we're in now, in my opinion, as the revelation that we need to change, and we need to do it post fucking haste. We need to be looking at apocalyptic signs and warnings that we need to fucking change, as the literal Greek translation of the word revelation. Yeah, maybe these religious texts we're talking about, what we're going through right now, this could be the apocalypse they're talking about. In my opinion, it well and truly could be. Maybe they got the timing wrong, maybe historians got the timing wrong, but either way, there is a very real apocalyptic threat, and we got to learn to read the warning signs. We've got to look at these warning signs, and we've got to start planning for the future. We've got to make it a better, cleaner, greener future. This brings us to the end of the mystery round. I know it probably isn't as funny as I made it out to be, but either way, I hope it was entertaining, and I hope it starts getting people thinking differently, and that one person on an individual level can have a impact on a global scale. I want to get people thinking and not just accepting and being terrified by these words, global warming and climate change, that you can do something about it. These companies don't have to these corporations and governments around the world don't dictate the future of the planet or the voice of the people. Let's think differently about it, and start thinking on an individual level that I can change things, I can have an impact. I don't have to have a negative impact, I can have a positive impact. So once again, thank you to all for listening to this episode. Make sure you subscribe to The Truth Tank on iTunes, Google and Podbean, and make sure you check out the newly launched Truth Tank YouTube channel. I'm in desperate need of some views and some YouTube traction. I only have a few episodes up at the moment, but I plan on adding some more. Alright, so if you want to see the Truth Tank grow, please rate, review, like and subscribe. Share it around on social media. If there's any friends out there that you think might like the show, get them onto it. It's the best way to help the show grow. The next episode is going to be a big one. It's going to be an historical based episode. I've been working on it for the past 3 to 4 weeks. I should hopefully have it done in the next 3-4 weeks, maybe a bit sooner. It's taken a long time. It's very research heavy, but it's going to be good. Okay, you're listening to The Truth Tank. This is The Truth. I am The Tank. May the truth be with you.